Hey everybody, this is Murray back with you again, and got a new episode of Lone Star Diary. And the idea for this came from a book I've been reading, and it's about an old cowboy. His name was E.C. Teddy Blue Abbott. Teddy Blue was his nickname. And the book is called We Pointed Them North: Recollections of a Cowpuncher. And the lady that started off writing this book, her name was Helena Huntington Smith. And she had the intentions of writing a book about the old cowboys. Well, she had heard about Teddy Blue, so she sought him out. And after she visited with him a while, it seems that Teddy was putting together his recollections for his own book. And so that's what this is about. And I'm going to just read some passages from it. And first we'll have the foreword, which went like this. E.C. Abbott was a cowboy in the great days of the 1870s and 1880s. He came up the trail to Montana from Texas with the longhorned herds, which were to stock the northern ranges. He punched cows in Montana, where there wasn't a fence in the territory, and he married a daughter of Granville Stewart, the famous early-day stockman and Montana pioneer. For more than 50 years, he was known to cowmen from Texas to Alberta as Teddy Blue. And this is his story, as told to Helena Huntington Smith, who says that the book is all Teddy Blue. She says, my part was to keep out of the way and not mess it up by being literary, because the cowboy flourished in the middle of the Victorian age, which is certainly a funny paradox. No realistic picture of him was ever drawn in his own day. So here is a self-portrait by a cowboy, which is full and honest. And Teddy Blue himself says, other old-timers have told all about the stampedes and swimming rivers and what a terrible time we had, but they never put in any of the fun. And fun was at least half of it. Now, this is Teddy Blue at the age of 18. And just look at those eyes. I mean, they just look crazy to me. I don't know. But he was quite a character, as his book shows. And I'm going to pick out these excerpts and do the best I can with the cowboy language. So if you'll bear with me, we'll go on with it right now. So you may even hear the pages turn because I'm just thumbing through it at random. And this is the beginning of chapter 1, and I'm just going to read a passage, and we're not going to let this go on too long, because I know people get bored just listening to somebody read. But I'm quoting now. This is from Teddy Blue, and this chapter was called How I Came to Montana. And I'm quoting him now. People who know me often talk as though I was from Texas. That is not correct. I was born at Cranwich Hall, Cranwich, County of Norfolk, England, on December 17th, 1860. But I came to Montana with a herd of Texas cattle in 1883. This is where they get the idea that I'm a Texan. All this part of Montana east of the mountains was settled by Texans who came here with the cattle, and so was Wyoming and parts of Colorado and New Mexico and the western half of the Dakotas and even Nebraska before the farmers ran them out. So that gives you a little background about Teddy Blue. And we've got several pictures of him. Let me get this one up. Yeah, stand by. Here we go. This is Teddy Blue and John Burgess and John Bowen. And this picture was made in 1884. And they don't have any sequence in this caption as to who's who. From that wild-looking face, I would say Teddy Blue is bottom left, but that might not be correct. But they were a rough-looking bunch. I think you'll have to agree with that. They were a rough-looking bunch. We'll go on back now and look at old Teddy Blue for a minute. There he is. There he is. I tell you what, I get kind of intrigued by looking at those eyes. I don't know about the rest of you folks, but he just looks mean as hell to me. He just looks mean as hell. 18 years old. I don't know, folks, what were you doing when you were 18 years old? I bet you wasn't driving cattle up the trail from Texas to Montana. You know, that's a long, long haul. I'm going to go on now and we'll leave this picture up and I'm going to read a little bit more. This is quoting Teddy Blue. He says, "For a long time, I have wanted to write a history of the cattle range and of the movement of the cattle as they were gradually pushed north over the Texas Trail. I have read plenty of histories of the trail written by other men who went over it they are entirely accurate as to facts, but they are not told right. They are like these cowboy songs I've seen in books and heard over the radio that are all fixed up and not the way we used to sing them at all." You know, further up in this book, Teddy talks about the handguns, you know, the Colt single action. And all this stuff you see in the movies about these cowboys and these gunslingers carrying two guns on their hip. Teddy Blue says that the only people that carried two guns were people like Wild Bill Hickok, true gunfighters that was their trade. They lived that. That's all they did. That was their job. And that's what Teddy talks about. He talks about the gunfighters and not the plain old cowboy. And when if I say 76 or 81 abbreviated, of course that's 1886 or 81. It's not 1900. This is way back then. So we're going to go on with it. And we'll see what else we can come up with. I'm in the 4th chapter, as I said before, and he talks a lot about what we would call today, we'd call prejudice. But he was talking about the Texas Cowboys. And the Texas Cowboys pretty much didn't think a lot of Mexicans. And I think that all goes back to the Texas Revolution and what they were taught down through the years. And then when it comes to black men, they didn't have any respect for them whatsoever. And I'll tell you right off the bat that the N word is used a whole lot in this book. But that gets back to the Civil War. When they thought of black people, they thought of the Reconstruction era, where the South was was under martial law for the most part, and there were Union troops in just about every town. And they had a whole lot of troops that were black. And some of them was taking advantage of the people that had been beaten in the war. And some of the blacks, I think, tried to rub that in their faces. And of course, that wasn't all of them. And I'm going on what I've read and what I've heard over the years. But I want to get into this fourth chapter because he really talks a lot about the people that he was dealing with. And he talked about one spot here where the school teacher asked this cowboy, and he's quoting her, where she said, "Oh, Mr. So-and-so, didn't the boys used to have a lot of fun riding their ponies?" And the old cowboy said, "Madam, there wasn't any boys or ponies. There was only horses and men." So that tells you right off the bat how they felt about it. And in this last chapter too, he talks about working for a fellow named Print Olive. Now that family was a bunch of hard men. And I kept reading that and I said, Print Olive, it triggered something in my mind. Well, what it was is a while back, or pretty good while, it ways back, I wrote a column about Print Olive, and it was about a man burner, a rancher turned man burner. And Teddy Blue recalls that account in this book about how I don't know whether they were horse thieves or rustlers or whatever, but Print Olive and his bunch caught them, and they hung them, and they shot them while they were hanging. And some folks said that they doused them with coal oil and set them on fire. Now, Teddy Blue, he kind of questions that some. He says that he knows they did shoot them while they were hanging, but he said there wasn't a farmer in that day and time that didn't smell like coal oil. So possibly, maybe he was telling a fact. And this is a paragraph from that Print Olive bunch, and I'm quoting Teddy Blue now. He says, "As for Print, it was the year before I came up the trail that he had his run-in with the settlers in Nebraska. They got him for it too, though he was not all to blame. It started because of some of these fellows were butchering his steers and selling them for elk meat. Print got his brother appointed stock inspector, and he found out that the two men named Ketchum and Mitchell were doing the butchering. When they went to arrest the two men, Bob Olive was killed. Rather than face Print's vengeance, the two settlers gave themselves up to be tried. And to make a long story short, Print followed them up when they was on their way to trial. He took them away from the sheriff and hanged them to a lone elm tree near Plum Creek. It was told afterwards that he poured coal oil on them and burned them alive. That was a damn lie. They were burned all right, but a man who was there told me that when they were hanging, Print shot them, and the powder was what set their clothes on fire. Afterwards, their clothes were analyzed, and the state's attorney claimed that there was coal oil showing. But where would you find a farmer without some coal oil on his clothes? And why would Print have stopped for coal oil in a hurry like he was? Print was a bad actor, and I ain't out to make excuses for him, but he had my sympathy in that case. So Teddy Blue, he doubts that the men were hung. And I kind of doubt if a man didn't have coal oil or something similar on his clothes, would a bullet from a Colt 45 set his entire body and his clothes on fire? I don't know. I kind of question that one too. But I encourage you to read this book. Like I said, I've only read 4 chapters of it, and you can get it on Amazon. And it's called We Pointed Them North, Recollections of a Cowpuncher. So these recollections are all from Teddy Blue. And the lady that he told his story to, she is quick to point out that all of this information came from Teddy Blue, that it didn't come from her. And Lord, he did write some good stuff in this book. And, you know, it's like I told you before, the eyewitnesses is what I look for. And he was talking about he wanted to go see his mama. He was her pet, and he hadn't seen her in a long time. And he had just finished a trail drive, and he wanted to go home. And I'm quoting him now. But before I went home, I stopped in North Platte, where they paid us off, and I bought me some new clothes and got that second picture taken. There is nothing long ago about that. I remember it like it was yesterday. I had a new white Stetson hat that I paid $10 for, and new pants that cost $12, and a good shirt and fancy boots. They had colored tops, red and blue, with a half-moon star on them. Lord, I was proud of those clothes. They were the kind of clothes top hands wore, and I thought I was dressed right for the first time in my life. I believe one reason I went home was just so I could show them off. But when I got there and my sister saw me, she said, "Take your damn pants out of your boots and put your coat on. You look like an outlaw." I told her to go to hell, and I never did like her after that, because those were my first store clothes that I had ever bought myself. Before that, my mother made my clothes, or they were bought for me, just like you'd do for a kid. My sister was a fool anyhow. So that gives you just a little taste of this book. And I'll tell you what, I'm really excited about it because it's one of those books that you can't put down. And of course, I'm so interested in the Cowboys and that time that, well, it's something that I really look forward to. And anyway, it's something that anybody that has worked cattle, which I haven't, or has been on a ranch, which I haven't, and I only rode a horse one time in my life, and the old boy whose horse I was riding was a little bitty short fella, and he had them stirrups sucked up so short that my knees were in my throat. And by the time we got off of that trail ride and I got off that horse, I couldn't walk. And you could see them cowboys standing around snickering. And the only other closest thing I came to it was I was a rodeo photographer. And I did that for a couple of years. And I totally enjoyed that. So anything Western, anything about the old cowboys, that's where I want to be. Because you see, I was raised up on being an urban cowboy. You know, Gillies in Houston and the Winchester Club. That's about the extent of my cowboy. But folks, I hope you enjoyed this one. And I'm probably going to do more on this book. You know, if you like the part that I've told you about already, well, I hope you'll let me know in the comments below. And I hope that you'll subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube where you'll get, anytime I make a new one, that you'll get it. But that's all for now, friends, and I'll see you on down the road. And in the meantime, God bless Texas. Good night, everybody.